Hello, my name is Zachariah Van Sliders with Old Man Gaming. This is another horrible review, and a special episode at that. But first, let's go into our usual disclaimers. Disclaimer number one, I do not get paid for this, nor do I do it professionally, so you might hear weird stuff in the background. I'm not going to go back and edit it. Disclaimer number two, I think video games is one of the most subjective forms of art, and therefore, I do not give it scores. I'm going to give you an overview, pros, cons, and whether or not I'm going to continue to play it. Disclaimer 3, I only get a couple hours with this, between 2 and 10 hours, so it's not super in-depth, and a lot of times I haven't probed every corner of the game. It's more of an everyman's perspective of the video game you're about to play. Today is a special episode because I am actually, for the first time ever, on our Horrible Reviews program, joined by a special guest. Introduce yourself.
I am Melissa. I am Zach's baby's mama and wife. And yeah.
I like how wife was second there.
Yes.
Okay, so she is also going to be lending her expertise in this game. Now, Melissa is not a huge gamer, but she does enjoy board games on the video game system that have been transferred to video games. She plays Monopoly. Mm-hmm. Wheel of Fortune is one of her favorites.
Jeopardy.
She also likes some old school Mario, which I married her anyway. But I'm going to go through the overview of what the game is and what it is, and then we're going to both give you your pros and cons. So, what this game is Pandemic. I haven't even said the title yet. That's pretty sad. What this game is Pandemic. It is the adaptation of the very popular board game. The idea of it is simple. You pick a character out of, I think, like 6 different characters, maybe 7.
6.
And each one has like a different ability, and the world just slowly gets infected with viruses, and you have to figure out...
Not so slowly.
Not so slowly. You have to basically cure all the viruses and keep them from spreading as they continue to go through turns. So as far as the gameplay itself, it is a direct adaptation of the board game. Basically, they made the board game digital, and that's very interesting. So each game is a different way to play. The cards are shuffled differently. You can pick different characters or whatever. You can also play it yourself and just play it by yourself. Although I don't know if you get more than one operator, if it's just you versus the game as one operator. We didn't check that out. We only played it together. So that's the overview. It's a very simple, straightforward board game adaptation. I will say one thing that was surprising to me, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more in the cons, is when you turn this game on, before anything else, you are greeted by this full motion video. Like, they paid actors, they had sets and everything, which is basically a trailer for the game that you're already paying, which at that point I don't understand the point of it.
You never see those people again.
That's the thing. You never see them again. Like, they obviously spent all the money on this weird in-game lead up to the game, which is jarring. I felt like you see this full motion video and then it just goes into a board game. Like,
yeah.
It would be like if the game Monopoly opened with a action-packed trailer with Bruce Willis in it, and it was just like,
the board
and then
game.
I pick a thimble and I move around a board. Okay, so that's the overview. It's that simple. So let's get to the pros. My pros are, I think it's really well done, faithful adaptation of the board game. From what I have actually...
Yeah, we played the board game once with friends.
Right. And I think this is pretty close from what I remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I will also say, and this is probably more to the board game than the game, I felt like it was very easy to pick up and understand.
It was, because on a con, there wasn't a lot of instruction in the digital, in the game that we played yesterday on the Xbox. While when we played the board game, obviously, we had instructions to look back on.
In fairness, we only did one tutorial too.
Right, but there was a bit of a learning curve, but we didn't have too much of a struggle.
I was worried about it because we just decided we had limited time because the child that I always speak of naps for like an hour a day, and that's when we get to do stuff together, and so we had limited time to record, so we skipped the tutorials, went right to the game. I was a little bit worried, but I thought it actually, we picked it up pretty fast. I didn't have any problem, figuring it out. I think there was only a couple of times where we did something and we were like, oh no, we had to discard a card for it. We didn't realize that ahead of time. But a lot of times too, the game stops you ahead of time and says you'll have to discard a card for this.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I thought that it was pretty easy to pick up.
Yeah, I would say so.
So what are your pros there, wife of mine?
I don't know, it was fun. I enjoyed it. It wasn't as difficult to read as I thought it was going to be, just from a visual standpoint, because I'm apparently going blind. It wasn't really that hard. I was expecting it to be
a lot of those board games
minute,
have very small text too.
It was pretty true to the game that we played, the actual board game, which I liked. Sometimes, like, I know you were kind of looking more for the people, the actors that were in that weird trailer thing in the beginning to be in it, but that's one of the things that sometimes bothers me, like when we play Monopoly. And there's the two different modes. You can play the one that just looks like the board game, or I think it's the 3D version or whatever.
Yeah,
and
the living board.
Yeah, the living board, and that always messes with, like, I have a hard time seeing everything. I kind of appreciated that there wasn't all the animation or the acting or whatever that whole thing was.
I just thought it's a jarring juxtaposition. Like, I would have been okay with it just being the board game. It's just, why did we then open with this strange, like, high production
And as
trailer?
much as it could have just been the board game, like, we couldn't sit down for an hour and play that actual board game. You know, like, and set up all the pieces and all that kind of stuff. So while it was just pretty much the board game in digital form, I actually kind of appreciated that.
I really felt like the other thing I liked is not calling you out at all, but when we get the board games, I try any board game that comes along, because that's something that you will play with me. And anytime I have an excuse to get you to play video games, I'm excited. But sometimes I feel like there's enough problems with the game that you never really fully get into it. And it's almost like I'm kind of dragging you into it a little bit. And I really felt like this one, I didn't feel that with this. I felt like it was easy enough that we got into it enough that we were excited to see the conclusion of the game, instead of just like thinking about when is this going to be over so we can watch Friends on Netflix or something.
Definitely.
Okay, so I think that wraps up the pros. I think we should probably go to cons now. So do you want to start us off on cons? Because I've got a couple I definitely want to talk about.
I think number one, the moving your guy or your
pawn.
Moving your pawn from one location to the other was a little bit wonky. Just, I mean, it wasn't like you were moving accidentally to the wrong place unless you hit the OK button.
Right.
So it wasn't like you're accidentally going to the wrong place and you're stuck there. So I guess I appreciate that. But the navigating itself, it seemed almost too sensitive.
You definitely took the words out of my mouth. I mean, the moving, my problem is with those board games, a lot of times they let you use the directional pad on this, and I feel like the directional pad would have been easier. They make you use the analog, and it's just too sensitive. And the way the movement is all the major cities around the world, but it's kind of small on the screen, so you move that analog, and it just jumps around the screen. It's very hard to like get it pinpointed on the city you want. And you're right, they had enough fail-safes that I never felt like I was moving to the wrong city.
Right.
But at the same time, it took me way too long to figure out how to make the thing move to the city.
Well, and as you get further in the game, you've got that music that speeds up and gives you like that adrenaline. So even though you're not moving to the wrong city and being stuck there, you still have this like, oh crap, I'm racing against time and it's going to the wrong place and now I'm going to die and the whole world's going to end. But
that's how you can tell we're old, by the way, because we get adrenaline rushes from board
music. Another con, and this is probably solely because I'm not a gamer, I do not like using the analog. Is it the analog? Yeah. I prefer to use the little arrows and just for navigating through the Xbox for like television and stuff like that, because whenever I use the analog in Netflix, it goes to the wrong thing. So I've gotten used to using the directional and in this, that was not really an option. So very petty con, but still a con in my book.
Though. I mean, that's a fair con. I didn't have as much problem with the analog on other things, but the moving, I felt like it was too sensitive on the movement. And there might be an option that we could turn down the sensitivity. We didn't go through the options, but it's a fair thing. I think one of the things about these board games that they transfer to video games, I really enjoy, because it does bring more people that wouldn't normally play video games into the video game world. I think anything that does that is great, but you also have to make it accessible to people who might not be.
I mean, it's
usable.
not the end of the world for me to have to use it, but
it's not the end of the world, but it's a con.
It's just not where my instinct goes, because I'm not used to doing it.
Right. I didn't have any real other cons other than the movement. I thought the gameplay was quite straightforward. I will say there's a couple of times where, and this, of course, we didn't play all the way through the tutorials, but there was never a clear cut, if you, this is the amount of turns until the world ends.
Yeah, it at one point it said, our time was almost up, but we don't really know.
Well, I figured out where it was. There's this little,
yeah, that red thing
up at the top.
But how is that determined?
It slowly fills up, but I think it's
But did it fill up based on time, or did it fill up based on the fact that we were losing terribly and the world was crumbling around us?
I think we were doing too bad.
We were doing okay. We had a plan, and then
it ended.
So angry.
It was a bummer. I think I would have rather had a turn counter.
Yes.
That was the one time that I would have wished they did less with the graphics.
Yes.
I just want turns till the world ends.
Or time. If it was time, I don't know which it was. And that would have been nice to know for sure. If we were on a 20-minute timer, then we could have watched a timer. If it was 20 turns or however many.
Well, I don't think it's actually a timer, because we played the board game the one time, and I'm pretty sure it's a number of.
That's what I thought, but I swear at one point it said your time is almost up, which alluded to the fact that there could be a timer. So I don't know.
I think the time is up is the number of turns.
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing that makes sense. Yeah. So the other thing that wasn't really clear, and I remembered it from the board game, is that whether or not you win from curing all 4 of the viruses. It doesn't really actually ever say that. It just says cure the viruses. We cured 3 out of 4, and then we had we were 2 moves away from curing the 4th.
Yeah.
And then the world ended, but I'm if we cure it, do we then have to move around and treat all the viruses still?
Right.
So I wasn't sure exactly how that worked, but still, I really enjoyed the game.
Yeah, and I would definitely play it again and maybe explore some of those things that we weren't completely sure of.
That's true. So, this does bring us to the final portion of the show, which is whether or not we're going to stick with it. I think we just heard that you're going to stick with it, and I will definitely stick with it. I like any board game that we both get into, and it's not, let's do this. And then it's okay, I'm doing this because my husband's here and he's... But I think we both actually had fun doing it. I didn't feel like either one of us were bored.
No, not at all.
So, all right. Well, this has been another horrible game review with the first ever history-breaking special guest, my wife, who allows all of this to be possible. So a big thanks to you, Melissa. Do you have anything you want to plug? That's
if
how these
anybody
work.
has a paralegal job in the Akron, Cleveland, Canton area, hit me up.
There you go. That's a very unique plug.
Yeah, that's all I got going on in my life.
All right, guys. Well, as usual, check everything Old Man Gaming has to offer at YouTube. Please like, subscribe. I am also on Facebook. I'd love to get a little bit more traffic there. Old Man Gaming at Facebook. And then, of course, as long as you guys keep watching these, I will keep making them. So till next time. Did you enjoy that horrible content? Well, there's more horrible content all over this channel. You can check out our horrible podcasts, or you can check out our other horrible reviews. Be sure to subscribe and turn notifications on, and then we'll let you know when horrible products are ready for you to view. You can also do so at Facebook, Old Man Gaming, and then we can notify you in 2 different places. Fun! Also, click any of the links around you to witness some of that horrible programming right now. Why do anything else? It's YouTube.